It was in the 1860s. You had this Spanish guy from Cuba that married a British woman that grew up in the Bahamas. One day, the man purchased a large piece of ham at the market and he brought it home. The wife prepared the meal. And the guy did this often. He loved ham. But then he figured out one day when he went to the trash can that there were a piece of ham in the trash can. And the husband became furious because he thought, hold on a minute, the ham is quite expensive. And my wife just got precious piece of ham that could have been used for consumption. So the husband, being upset, asked the wife, why do you cut off the edges of the ham? The wife was shocked that he even asked her that question. The wife told him, that's just how you prepare ham. The husband did not agree. So the husband asked her mother, which was his mother-in-law. The mother-in-law said, well, this is how you prepare ham. The grandmother-in-law of the Spanish man, let's call the Spanish man Diego, the grandmother-in-law of Diego told him, Diego, when we arrived here in 1795, there were changes going on in the Caribbean. And there was a big risk that the Lucayan Islands, or what we call the Bahamas, could be invaded by Spain. At the time, there was scarcity in the Bahamas. So, due to the poverty that lasted for a few years, we had to adapt. We were colonists that just arrived from Britain, so we weren't used to it. We received meat from Jamaica, another English possession in the Caribbean. And because the pens we had were small, we had to cut off the edges of the ham in order for us to use them. And since then, it has been a custom amongst British colonists in the Bahamas to cut off the edges of the ham before they prepare it. But now, in the 1860s, we don't have to do that anymore, because the Bahamas is a quite wealthy colony at the moment. Now, this parable isn't a unique one. I've heard a similar parable elsewhere often, but I adapted it a little bit in a historical context. Now, what am I teaching you with this parable? That British woman from the migrant community, she was conditioned to cut off the edges of the ham. And cutting off the edges of the ham was a practical thing. It was a beneficial thing. But in the context of the 1790s and early 1800s, when there was a threat that the Bahamas could be invaded by Spain. When the threat of invasion caused a decline in the economy of the Bahamas, it was then, in that context, people began to cut off the edges of the ham because the resources were few and the meat they received was enormous. But it was now the 1860s. Spain lost most of its colonies in the Americas, and the Bahamas was a wealthy place. So this whole cutting the edge of the ham principle did not apply anymore. In fact, it became a waste because now 20% of the ham that Diego purchased ended up in the trash can. It was wasting of food. But this cutting off the edge of the ham was so installed into this British wife that she just couldn't see that what she was doing was dysfunctional. Now, she had knowledge how to prepare ham. And the knowledge was practical, it worked, but it was not the right context. So she did prepare ham, and the ham she prepared was delicious, but there was still a waste of 20% of ham. That 20% could have been added to the rest of the ham, and they would have more food. They could even share it with neighbors. But now you had ham being wasted. Look, what I'm saying in this video is, sometimes what you know is keeping you back. Sometimes what you know is destroying you. I know in the Old Testament it's written, my people perish through the lack of knowledge. Listen, that the Most High did not say the world perishes through the lack of knowledge. He said, my people perish through the lack of knowledge. Now the world is perishing anyway. So it's not needed to address the world. The Most High addressed his people, and they perished due to lack of knowledge. It's not that they didn't have any knowledge, but the knowledge he had was either outdated or the knowledge he had was misplaced because it wasn't in the right context. So it's a lack of proper knowledge that caused the decline of God's people. Now in the world, this happens all the time, but in the world you have a lot of compensations, and therefore people don't know that their knowledge is either outdated or in the wrong context. Okay, let me give another parable now. Let's say you have Elizabeth. Elizabeth is married to Frank, but their marriage is falling apart. And Elizabeth's complaint is that her husband doesn't act like a man. She often tells her husband, be a man, be a man. She's very upset because he's not a man, according to her. So one day, a psychologist takes the case, and he looks into Elizabeth's past. And he looks into Elizabeth's parents and grandparents. And what do you know? Elizabeth's great-grandparents fought in a civil war. And those military ideals were transferred onto her grandparents. And her grandparents, on both sides, also came from a military background. But her parents did not grow up in a military background, but they still transferred that attitude onto Elizabeth. So Elizabeth's expectation of a man was he had to be rough and fierce and very intimidating. She had an expectation of a man that was transferred onto her. And she was taught by her siblings and also by other people how to find that type of man. Now, this husband, Frank, knew that in his community, women often wanted a fierce, intimidating man. So he knew how to fake that intimidating attitude to get laid. I'm saying it plainly as it is. He knew how to use his trick to get access to females. And that's how he ended up with Elizabeth. And they married. So Elizabeth had expectations that didn't add up. And Frank had knowledge. And the knowledge worked. He got around a few women and eventually he met Elizabeth and they married. But here's the thing. Frank's knowledge destroyed him. Because now he was with a woman that couldn't stand him, that didn't value him, and that was psychologically abusing him every day. But his knowledge worked. His knowledge was practical. He got a few girlfriends and eventually got a wife. But the knowledge was corrupt. It was not in the right context. First of all, Frank shouldn't give in to such a dangerous expectation just to be with someone. But Frank thought, if a lot of women have that expectation and I want to get with one, I need to pretend to be like that to trick them. And he did, and he got in trouble. So what he knew destroyed him. And Elizabeth, at the other hand, knew how to play the victim and to get attention from men. So she eventually divorced Frank and got with another man. And this man reflected her expectations. But this man ended up beating her. And she ended up in a home shelter. Now what happened? She had knowledge, she had understanding, and it worked. But because the knowledge worked for her, she was blinded from seeing that the knowledge was self-destructive. In both cases, what they knew destroys them. So, it would have been better if Frank was completely ignorant in how to relate to the opposite sex, because then at least he would have been realistic to learn from others, but because he was conditioned with knowledge that worked, and he used that knowledge, he was blinded from evaluating whether that knowledge was right or not. Look, this comes down to business, comes down to social relationships. It doesn't only apply to marriages, okay? Often it's what you know that's keeping you back. Often it's what you know that's keeping you trapped. And it's one thing I want to add here. A lot of you are so attached to your good manners. You're so attached to your morals. You're so attached to the fact you were raised. Okay, let's say now you're in public and there's a bus that stops. The people getting out and people getting in. Let's say it's a long bus, so you don't have to step entering in the front. There's this guy that comes by and he enters in from the left, while all the others enter out at the right at the same time. Now the people that were standing there were waiting until everyone left the bus before they entered in. So the people that waited their turn were thinking, who does this chick think she is? Or who does this guy think she is? It can be a chick, it can be a guy, okay, it doesn't matter. They think, who does individual think he or she is, huh? Is he so important that he or she can't wait? Here's the thing. This individual lived 5 years in Japan. And in Japan, that's how it goes. One side people enter out, the other side people enter in. Because in Japan, people are in a rush. They have a rush culture, so trains have to depart on time. Also buses. So this individual returned back, let's say to Holland or to Germany, and he realized, hold on a minute, to wait for everyone to leave the bus before others enter in takes a lot of time. It's better just have people entering from one side and others leaving from the other side. And the guy was right. But those other people over there were conditioned by their parents and by society to be respectful and to have manners. So they thought, we have manners. We let people get out of the bus. We give people space, but that other guy doesn't. Now that other guy, or maybe it's a girl, doesn't matter, that individual eventually arrives at a job and later goes home at peace. And the other people that were upset, offended, they now for days, they have health issues because of the anger, because of the negative energy that the anger brought onto them. Now, who caused those health issues that lasted for days? It's not an individual that rushed into the bus. It's their own expectations they held onto that were triggered. When those expectations were triggered, they had to look at themselves, examine themselves, and let go. They didn't want to do that. So it's them holding on that destroyed them. They had knowledge. They knew things. They knew how to have manners. But what they knew was destroying them. Look, you can have common expectations of other people. That's how you function in a community. Okay? Look, if someone entered the bus and they pushed others aside and people fell to the ground and people got hurt, that would be something different. Then there would be a real violation that took place. But now you had someone entering a bus from the left side where all the others could just get out on the right side. So there was no real violation, but people felt violated because their expectations were not validated. That sometimes happens, that people turn on you, get upset with you, that sometimes people even look for a fight with you because they have expectations that you did not give into. And they want to blame you because they have no intention of looking at themselves. So you need to be charged with violence or with harm just because their will is not honored. Yeah, folks like that. There's no, I would say, working things out with such people. They just will whatever they will. They don't want to look at themselves because they know things, they have pride in the knowledge they have. Now let me tell you, there's nothing wrong with having knowledge, but what if the knowledge you have is destroying you? What if your will is not correct? What if your will is wrong? If your will is wrong and you have knowledge how to enforce your will, then that knowledge is not a blessing unto you because your will is not right. What you know can destroy you. Okay? So that's why it's important to agree with Christ. Be at peace.